On today's episode of the Retro Gamers Podcast, my friend Jon Pratt stops by to talk about some of our favorite horror games, old, new, and coming soon. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Retro Gamers Podcast, episode 422. Anthony here, and joining me this week back on the show is my friend Jon Pratt. Jon, how you doing, man? Welcome back.
Good, man. Yeah, good to see you. It's been a little bit, but here we are. It's that time of year.
It's that time. You know what? It's that time of year, and I couldn't think of anybody else, I think, that was better suited to join me for this episode, because this is our annual Halloween episode, and the only person who could join me on this would be a fellow horror nut, and I know you are a horror gamer, horror fan, so just kismet.
Yeah, yes, sir. A little bit ironic. I mean, the Virtual Boy was the spookiest thing that Nintendo has ever put out, so shout out to your previous episode on that.
Thank you very much. And if you and also if you missed last episode 421, I did an interview with Richard Moss, who was the writer and director of the horror game docuseries called Terror Bites. And I highly recommend going back and checking out that series. It was really well done. It was I think it was 5 or 6 episodes that focused solely on the history of horror video games. So it was really, really cool. But today, to finish off October, which again is probably my favorite time of year, mostly because of Halloween. It has nothing to do with the fact that I always get a year older in October, which I can't stand. But we are going to talk about some of our favorite horror games to kind of go through the not necessarily like the overall history of horror games, but kind of focus like in sections on like, you know, retro horror gaming, maybe some current horror gaming, and some stuff we haven't played, some things that were recently announced, because out of nowhere, a whole bunch of licensed games got announced. So we're going to try and touch on a little bit of everything in the horror genre. And obviously, being the Retro Gamers Podcast, Jon, I think it would be great if we just started with the retro side of things. How's that sound to you?
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right. So where would you like to start? If we're talking retro horror games, like where do you go back to? Like what's your first experience with a horror game?
A lot of old PC games, I think, is where things truly got spooky.
Okay.
Not to say that there weren't horror games on like the NES or Super Nintendo, but I think they really hit home and became into their own in the early 90s, I'd say, when PCs started to become, prevalent. Yeah.
And you're a little younger than me, so I think your start is a little bit more recent than me. I think my very first foray into horror gaming, I did not experience the Atari 2600 horror games when I was a kid. Those I did not like. I did not have the Halloween game. I did not have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game. But I think the first one that I really remember was on the Commodore 64, actually, and it was the Friday the 13th game on there. And I remember going to my cousin's house because he had a Commodore 64, and he said, he's like, do you want to play Friday the 13th? So he set it up for me. I played it. At this time, I was already watching horror movies. I was maybe, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old at that time. Yeah. I started horror young. But I remember playing that game, and I just remember, I will always remember, like, there's a moment in that game, because the whole point is that you're a counselor, there are other counselors around, and Jason is disguised as a camp counselor, and you have to figure out which one he is before he obviously kills everybody off. Weird concept for a Friday the 13th game, because Jason's not exactly a stealthy guy in terms of like going undercover. But what I do remember from the game is that when all the other counselors were killed by Jason and you're the only one left, there's this really loud sound that comes out of your Commodore. And if you remember, like, the sound chip on that thing, it was all very like, is that kind of noise, of noises that you get out of it. Really loud noise just jumps out of your speakers, and then there's a severed head on your screen. And I just remember I practically fell out of the chair I was sitting in when that jumped up on the screen. It was just the combination of the image and the sound. And that was like instantly like burned into my memory as like, okay, I go, The game itself, not great. I go, but that moment was absolutely worth the experience alone.
Yeah.
Um, and there've been other Friday the 13th games, of course, but like that was the very first one that I remember. If you can go back, like, do you remember the very first one that you played?
Yeah, at a buddy's house, his mom had an IBM laptop that she used for work, and we loaded up Alone in the Dark.
Of
Um,
course.
if you've never played it, it's sort of the granddaddy, uh, the original, I guess, 3D survival horror game.
Survival horror. Yep.
Brutally hard. If you go back and play it today, it's a little bit laughable. The motions it's just bad. If you thought
Yep.
the controls in Resident Evil were bad, this is even worse than that. It's slow. It's the
Hmm.
enemies, they're pretty funny. When you finally do get a weapon, you have to like angle it properly, and like you can just completely miss your shots. And but it was that the first game where it really had the atmosphere. It had the supernatural horror. Inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, right?
Of course.
You know,
Well,
but prior to that, I remember playing, the on a cursory level, like the Friday the 13th NES game and like the Nightmare on Elm Street, but they were all like LJN games, and LJN was
yeah.
notorious for just being really just bad at game development.
Oh yeah, no question about that. Alone in the Dark was one of those games actually. I did not play it because at the time I didn't get a PC. I didn't get a PC until like the mid 90s. So by that time, Alone in the Dark was surpassed by other games. And I kind of fell into the whole full motion video thing, which we'll get into in a minute. But having watched other gameplay of Alone in the Dark, you can definitely see like how clunky it is.
Yeah,
Even the colors of it, like I felt like the color palette of it was at times like kind of bright for a horror game. But
yeah,
despite all of that, you have to start somewhere. And just being able to say like this was like your first like 3D survival horror game, I mean, it kind of set the standard for everything that was going to follow. And I think for that reason alone, it's earned its place, you know,
yeah,
in the record books for horror games.
yeah, definitely. I mean, they were trying. Obviously, the setting was right, the monsters were right.
Yep.
Yeah, they were trying to set the mood, but yeah, I mean, it was definitely just a proto, like this,
Yeah.
first one.
Well, and there've been, there were sequels. I know Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare was much later when and then obviously, graphics were better, controls were better, so they were able to take advantage of it. There it is, right there, PlayStation.
Yeah, I was around for that one when it first dropped, and I was like, I have to get that. And
Nice.
the cool thing about this is that the flashlight is a huge mechanic.
Yep.
You're in the dark mansion, and you have to use the flashlight to kind of freeze enemies. So
Nice.
not only can they see you kind of coming around corners if you have it on, but if you shine the light on them as they're coming at you, it kind of scares them away, which is pretty cool.
That is kind of awesome. That's
Yeah.
something that Nintendo took advantage of, I think, in Luigi's Mansion many
Yeah.
years
Oh,
later
yeah.
in a more cartoonish way, right?
Yeah, 100%. And in true survival horror fashion, they're kind of stingy with the ammo. So
Yes.
you get 5 bullets in the entire game. You kind of have to use the flashlight.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so
All
that,
right. Well, there's a
yeah,
challenge.
that's on the deep end of things. I'm sure they give you more than that. It's been a while since I've played it, but I remember it being a pretty tough challenge. Just like in the OG Resident Evil, you maybe get 2 clips in the entire game, if you're playing as Chris anyway.
Yeah, I remember. Well, I remember the challenge in Resident Evil of not only having just like limited ammo was the fact that Chris could only like Jill was able to carry two more items than Chris could, and that what made such a huge difference in that game.
He started
Uh,
with a gun as well, and he did not. So
yes, he
he
had a
had a, he
knife.
had a knife.
He had a knife. Yeah, also part of the challenge. Um, But before we fast forward to that, I wanted to touch just a little bit on the NES because that's where my first experience, like I had that Commodore 64 one, but then in terms of my own games, you mentioned the LJN ones, the Friday the 13th, the Nightmare on Elm Street. Like those were really my first horror games. And obviously, made based on two of my favorite horror movie franchises, of course, of the same names. And to your point, not the best games ever made. Especially the Friday the 13th one was pretty clunky, and you can essentially beat it in about like 15, 20 minutes tops if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I will say though that the Nightmare on Elm Street game to me was very entertaining. I loved that they took the concept straight out of one of the films. They basically built it off of a Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors, which is arguably the best Nightmare movie that was made. And I love the fact that they use that as a setting. You can see the moments in the game where like they had the junkyard you had to go to. When you fell asleep, you got to choose between three different superpowers that you have. Um, and you fight Freddy. You can fight Freddy at the end. You fight Freddy at the end of every level, and obviously it's a different version of him, which again also kind of came from Dream Warriors, because if you remember that movie, like he was kind of the snake kind of thing in the
Yeah. Yeah.
dream and stuff like that. So, like I really felt like that game was far superior to what they did with Friday the 13th, because I really felt like they captured like the actual essence of the movie.
Yeah.
And again, and for LJN, that's saying a lot. Like they actually put a decent, in my opinion, they put a decent amount of work into that one. And on top of it, it was one of the very few games also that was 4 players on the NES.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you had the multi-tap, you can play it with 3 other friends. So granted, on the screen, it looked like a bit clunky and it was hard to maneuver with 4 people, but still, it was an interesting game to be a multiplayer game.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
Um, yeah, I remember playing a little bit of that one, and again, it was just a little bit clunky, sort of like the Friday the 13th game, but
yeah.
I get what they were trying to go for, and you just had to use a little bit more of your imagination, you know?
You did. And I think my nightmare on Elm Street is sitting up above my right shoulder over there. You can see my background, Scott. I kind of horrored out my background for October.
Yep.
Actually, Friday the 13th is kind of sitting over, which shoulder am I at? My left shoulder right there, right
Yep.
next to Night Trap, which is a whole other uh, game to get into. But did you play FMV games at all? The
A
full
little
motion
bit,
video
yeah.
ones?
Um, I had a buddy that had a 3DO back in the day. He was probably the only guy like
Nice.
in the tri-state area that had one. And most of those games were FMV and not good ones by any
No.
stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, Alone in the Dark was ported to the 3DO, and it's arguably it plays better than the PC.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
one of the few exceptions.
Okay. Well, yeah, with FMV was tough back when it first came out, especially when it was on console. Like I had a Sega CD and absolutely loved my Sega CD, but a majority of the games I played on that were FMV games. And obviously one of the most infamous ones, which is Night Trap, that I love to play. I never beat the game because I never stuck with it long enough to kind of learn the patterns of how to play that game. But just the whole concept of like, wow, it's like a movie's playing out and I'm deciding how the movie's going to go. And, if I do well, the girls at the slumber party will survive or certain ones are going to die depending on what happens. And I just thought, um, it was a cool way to change the way people looked at gaming. Was it ultimately successful back then? Maybe not necessarily, but they were working with what they had. So I thought it was a decent step forward. Whereas on PC, they were able to get away with a lot more because PCs were more powerful. So when you look at games like, I will always talk about Seventh Guest and 11th Hour because those were like some of like the first PC games I really ever played, and I absolutely love the Seventh Guest. So, but again, it was a mix of going through a mansion, solving puzzles, and then as you solve the puzzles, then you get a full motion video sequence telling you part of the story.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Night Trap gets kind of a bad rap too because it was, caught up in that whole rating board thing.
Of course.
And to be honest with you, I think I'd mentioned this in a previous podcast, but I only played a little bit of Seventh Guest. Never played what was the sequel, the 11th Hour.
11th Hour. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I liked Night Trap for what it was.
All right. Well, I highly recommend you get a copy of Seventh Guest. I know obviously the OG is sitting out there right over here too,
Yeah.
again on my wall, but they've also re-released it on Steam. You can buy like Seventh Guest 11th Hour, and then there's a fan made sequel to it called The 13th Doll that I backed on Kickstarter. That took like 5 years to come out after it got backed. But they eventually did come out with it, and they went back and got like some of the original cast for it and everything, which was really cool.
Yeah.
So there were three games in that franchise. And you can buy them on Steam. In fact, even on PlayStation 5, they came out with a VR version of The Seventh Guest that works with the VR2, which I'll never own because the VR2 was a colossal failure.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, VR. That's a whole other story we'll get to later. But the ones that I remember, like Seventh Guest and 11th Hour, are the ones I remember on my PC. I never got into, and I don't know if you ever got into Phantasmagoria. That never crossed my path.
I mean, I know of it. I didn't buy it in the
Same.
time, and and I know some people that have it now and kind of swear by it. It's one of those like late Sierra games.
Yep.
Gabriel Knight is another one people talk about.
Oh yeah, I've heard of Gabriel Knight.
Yeah,
But Phantasmagoria is always the one that I hear is like where they really push the envelope in terms of like how R-rated can you get with
yeah,
these
yeah,
types of things. So, and I don't have an original copy I don't have a copy of the original one. I think I have one of the sequels on on PC, but I've yet to play it because who has time?
yeah. It's one of those things where if I got it, it would just sit in the pile with my 37 other games I'm waiting to play. So
Only 37?
it's a roundabout number.
All right. But okay, so sticking with the retro stuff. We talked about a few of them. What else is on your list for retro that was most memorable to you?
Um, yeah. I'd have to say. Yeah, so I Have No Mouth, I Must Scream, the video game adaptation of Harlan Ellison's short story.
Yep.
It's an obscure title, but it's a post-apocalyptic. In the future, this supercomputer nukes all of humanity.
Hmm.
Everyone is dead except for like four humans that it keeps alive in a dungeon for its own amusement. And
I think it was
you
five,
five,
actually.
yeah, five,
Hmm.
yes. And, you play as these characters in different scenarios, and it starts off kind of putting you through a game that it wants to play. Like you're going through a tunnel and you have to find food, and it's just dark and but one of those games you kind of have to play. It's expensive now, but in the time again nobody bought it.
Of
Um,
course.
but I'm sure you can find it on GOG or one of those sites.
Oh, I'm sure it's possible. I think also one of the draws to that game, because again, I've never played it, but I have done some, I have like looked it up and stuff. But one of the draws to that game too is that like the stories for each of the characters, because they're like each of the characters kind of have like these fatal flaws, and you experience these flaws as you're going through the game. So it's a very well-rounded kind of experience with them as you're descending into like all of these dark scenarios.
Yeah, and they all kind of find out that they're doomed. They know that they're
Hmm.
doomed, but the supercomputer kind of mutates them as, time goes on.
Yeah.
And a couple of them collaborate to just kind of take each other out. And by the end of it, there's one guy left. And, the supercomputer removes his mouth and basically, hence the title of the book and the game.
Yeah.
Um, so truly horrific, post-apocalyptic, nightmare scenario.
Yeah. Well, it might be our future too with AI coming out, right?
Yeah, who knows where we're next?
Yeah, time will tell. But yeah, that one's always that one's definitely worth mentioning just for again the content, the darkness. It's a perfect Halloween game to play.
Definitely.
There's no question about that. One of the ones that I always talk about when October comes around is Tecmo's Deception.
Yep.
And I remember getting that on the PlayStation, and I remember how unique the concept was because this is going back to the days of when, we didn't have the internet yet, or if we did, it was extremely young. So there wasn't a whole like, oh, just going to go online and look up games and stuff like that. So I just remember being in, um, I don't remember if it might have been Software Etc. at the time, but I remember being in Software Etc. and seeing Tecmo's Deception on the shelf, and I just flip it over and I read, I was reading the back of it and I'm like, oh, I was like, Yeah, I need to own this game because the concept of the game is incredibly dark.
Oh yeah,
Where, yeah, you play as somebody, I forget if he was a knight or something like that, fell in love, and the fell in love with like a princess. Some king didn't want him to be with the princess, so then they like burned him at the stake, killed him. But then he gets revived by Satan, and the whole goal of the game is now you're in this castle, and your goal is to trap anybody who comes to the castle, setting up traps around the castle to trigger on them. And then once you like suck out all of their life force, you decide whether you're going to um like I forget if it's like ingest their soul or send them straight to hell. You had like an option on what you can do with them. Both of them equally horrific,
yeah,
but some of them were like feeding the souls to the devil, and then the other one was that you just like you took their life force. So all in all, like I just thought it was an incredibly dark concept, and it was right down my alley, and I absolutely loved playing that game. And it was only years later that I found out, many, many, many years later. In fact, I think I was already doing the podcast 9 years ago when I found out that there's a whole franchise for this Tecmo's Deception. There were at least four games that I know of, I believe. And I now own all four because it was Tecmo's Deception, I think Kagero, Tecmo's Deception 2, Trapped, Trapt, and I think there's a fourth one that I can't remember the title. But absolutely, like, just I thought it was such a unique game, and probably one of the very few first-person perspective games that I was able to stomach without getting a major headache.
yeah. I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, nobody really does any of those games justice.
No.
Uh, and I was in the same boat. I think it was in the bargain bin outside Babbage's up here, and same deal. I read it. And I was like, yep. And yeah, you make a deal with the devil. You're about to be executed. You end up in this castle, and you're just collecting souls. You have to trap all these people that just stumble into the mansion looking for, fame or they're plunderers or whatever, and you're just killing them off one by one and deciding what to do with them.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the rare exceptions making a deal with the devil actually is, goes in your favor. But I think by the
Yep.
end of it, you have several different endings where you can kind of help him, or you can kind
Hmm.
of play with him, or end up with your loved one once again, and it's pretty interesting based on your choices. So
And like I said, all in all, it's just like it's interesting when you get to play a game where, because it doesn't happen that often, where you get to play a game where you're like, oh, you know what? Like I'm actually the bad guy. Like I'm playing as the bad guy. Because back then, especially when we're talking like early 90s, a lot of games didn't go that route. You were always the hero, you were always saving everybody. So here was such an interesting twist on that, where it's like, oh, wait, I get to be the bad guy, I get to kill everybody, even though like you were wrong to start with. I mean, you're just murdering innocent people a
yep.
lot of the time. So definitely a series worth looking into or going back to visit, especially for anybody out there who, you're watching this or listening to this and you love horror games. This may be one of those obscure ones you don't know about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you were the
Yeah.
monster the whole time.
Yeah, you're the monster the whole time. But going from being the monster to fighting the monsters, you touched on this a little while ago, and I wanted to hold for a moment, but you can't talk about horror games, especially retro horror games, without going back to Resident Evil. I mean, Resident Evil is, probably considered the most successful horror franchise in video game history. I don't know. Obviously, that's just a guess on my part, but I
It's
would
got
think
to be.
it's
Yeah,
got to be considering we're getting number 9 now, not counting the little spin-off ones they did.
we can omit 5 and 6.
We can, well, you know what? I'm fine omitting 5 and 6 because I'll be honest with you, for the franchise, the last one I played was Code Veronica because as soon as they changed the format in 4 from that survival horror to more action oriented, I like when I saw that, I kind of walked away from the franchise because I was like, I didn't want to switch that. I really loved the survival horror aspect of it. And everybody has told me like 4 is amazing. And I'm not going to discredit that. It was just more of a personal preference on my part.
Yeah, for 100%. I mean, I obviously I picked up more. It's a completely different game. It was amazing then, and the remake on the PS5 is also incredible. But it's like the debate. Do you like Alien or Aliens? Right? You've got the true horror,
Yep.
or you've got the action. They're both excellent game or films, but
Yes.
it's a preference thing.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's one of those things where it's like maybe one day I'll go back. I actually have a copy of Resident Evil 4, I think on PlayStation 2. So it's in my collection to go back and play, but I will never forget my experience like sitting in my bedroom at the time because I lived when the first Resident Evil came out, I was still living at home. I was in high school at the time. And I had a very, very small bedroom. So like literally like where I was sitting, the television was like maybe 12 inches from where I was sitting on my bed.
Yep.
So and it wasn't a big TV, so but because I was sitting so far, so close to it, hook up my PlayStation, throw in Resident Evil, and man, I just remember turning off the lights, setting the mood, and just getting scared out of my mind with certain things. Obviously, the dog jumping through the window, which was an homage to Alone in the Dark.
Yep.
But just that moment of the dog coming through the window, I remember jumping out of my skin when that happened. And I was like, oh, wow. I feel like I'm experiencing like an actual horror movie, but I'm controlling it. And what better horror movie can you control than like a zombie flick?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think I was at my cousin's house when I first experienced that for the first time. Heard my uncle had it, and then yeah, it was about the same time they were marketing Resident Evil 2, like the hard.
Oh yeah.
I was seeing all the commercials back in like late '97, early '98, and I was like, holy crap, they're making this follow up to this, and it's gonna be you can be either character, and it's got a police station. Or we get to see what's going on downtown.
Yep.
I touted this game, the last episode I was on, as a superior sequel.
That's
Um,
right.
just an amazing game, man, all the way around. The whole series, well, not the whole series, not five or six. I'm not those don't count.
Those don't count. We won't count 5 or 6. Well, if you think about it, you can kind of replace them because Code Veronica is not considered like, that should have been Resident Evil 4 because
Yeah.
that came out after Nemesis. So, if we kind of push, we can maybe nudge out 5 and 6 where it's like just yeah.
Yeah. No, five. I mean, once you get to five, you're playing as Chris and you're punching boulders in a volcano.
Oh geez. No.
It's not the same thing.
Well, then
But
there was also Zero that came out, right? Resident Evil Zero.
for the GameCube, yeah,
Yep.
they remade Resident Evil the OG for the
That's
GameCube,
right. Hmm.
uh, which is amazing, by the way. If you get the chance,
Yes.
they added a mechanic in that where you need to carry a fuel flask with you with a lighter. So when you down a zombie, you have to burn them, and
Oh, that's cool.
if you don't burn them, they come back as red zombies with claws, and they're even faster and more terrifying.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, which is a cool mechanic.
That is a cool mechanic. I remember when it came out, I didn't buy it because I still had my original copy on PlayStation. So I'm like, well, why am I going to buy the remastered? I'm fine with what I have. So I just kind of passed it by.
Yeah,
Looks like I missed out.
I bought a GameCube to play that game, and
Wow.
and Resident Evil Zero came out in short order. And the most frustrating thing about that was that they did away with item boxes. So
Oh,
there's a mechanic where you play as Rebecca Chambers, the medic from Bravo Team,
yep.
and it's the prequel, leading up to the beginning of Resident Evil 1. So you kind of get to see what's going on there. You're escorting a prisoner, you team up with said prisoner, and there's a dual mechanic where you can switch off between either of them.
Hmm.
You get stuck, and one level you can send Billy up to the second floor. Now you're playing as him. You can send an item down, a dumb waiter, switch back to Rebecca. Um,
That's
but
an interesting dynamic.
but once your item inventory fills up, you have to drop items. So you have to remember where you drop the item because it's perma dropped.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so if you run out of space and you got to drop a gun, guess what? You got to, have a notepad and drop gun in the lobby first floor corner, um, because there's no item boxes. So that was the biggest point of contention for me with that one.
All right. Yeah, I was going to say they definitely upped the difficulty level just by doing that alone.
Yeah.
Because I just remember how much of a challenge it was just even getting to the item boxes they had in the game just to put stuff away.
Yep.
That was hard enough. Just getting rid of those is just cruel.
And if you really want to be a masochist, at a harder difficulty in Resident Evil, the remake, um, so in the normal mode, all the item boxes are linked together, so it doesn't matter which one you go to, your items are still going to be in there.
Okay.
In the hard mode, it's locked to that item box where you place the item.
Oh wow. So you have to go all the way back. Ah, yeah. No.
Yep.
No, no. That
Um,
is sadistic.
Here's a fun pickup for you. So at the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo, somebody, and so as you know, they developed Resident Evil 2 about 80% of the way through, and
Yep.
then they scrapped it, and we got the game that we got. But the original game was in a police station with Leon, but it had a different character called Ezra Walker.
Yes.
She was a
Mhm.
motorcycle enthusiast. So I picked up the ROM hack,
Oh wow.
Resident Evil 1.5, and it can,
That's awesome.
yeah, it contains like the source code for the original Resident Evil 2. Um,
Oh, I didn't know they made the ROM hack for that.
Yeah, it's a homebrew ROM hack. Somebody compiled it. I saw it and I had to have it. Um,
I don't blame you. I would have grabbed that if I saw it too.
you got to have a modded PS1 to play it, but whatever.
I do have a modded PS1.
Well, I'll send it away. You can borrow it.
I was just gonna say that's how I play all my games from Japan. So
Yeah,
because I have
I'm
a
gonna
nice
want it
little.
back. I'm gonna want it back though.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Um, but yeah, so Resident Evil is always going to be on the list. I think for both of us. The other one we can talk about from the mid '90s that I know we both love, and we were just talking about it even before we recorded, and we always bring it up to each other when we talk about gaming is Clock Tower.
Yeah.
And so for you, you know, me, I've talked about it ad nauseum on the show, but on your side of things, like what is it about the Clock Tower game or games, because there are multiple ones in the series,
Yep.
that appealed to you so well?
So I can't recall how that game came into my life. Whether it was a bargain bin special, this is my original copy, by the way,
Nice.
or what. But it introduced two things to me that were fascinating. So this isn't the first game that has multiple endings. There are plenty of games that do that.
Yep.
This is the first one that had an A through F ending. So A being the absolute best, F being you die, everybody dies, and the
Yep.
mansion gets sucked into a hell portal.
Yeah.
Um, and it was the first game that introduced to me being able to screw up the best possible ending by not picking up an item in the beginning of the game.
Yes,
So for those reasons, I would play through this as slow and as tedious it can be. It can be at times. There's a
it
lot of
can be.
you're moving a mouse cursor across the screen, whatever. As good as you think you're doing, you get to the end and you're like, I beat the game. Surely this is it. And it's like you get the C ending. I'm like, what did I do wrong?
Yep.
I'm like going back through the books now. I'm like, okay, I picked up I saved Inspector Gotts, but I didn't. So it challenges you to go back through and play it. But dark setting, you've got Scissor Man is a persistent threat. Um, Fun fact, if I could retcon one of my games from the sequels, this
Hmm.
technically is a sequel, direct sequel to the Super Famicom version,
Correct.
because you're playing as Jennifer Simpson like a year later.
Hmm.
Um, so you've got the same character. So if you played Super Famicom and you go to this, it's going to feel natural. Um, there's just so many things about that game that are cool. So many things you can miss. But yeah, it's a great title all around.
Yeah, no, and I agree because I remember when I first purchased it. This was at the time when, because I believe in the US it came out in 90. I want to say it came out in 97. It came out in 90. It was 96 in Japan, 97 here. And I remember this was at the height of the Scream phase when the slasher movies were making a comeback because Scream came out in 96. And so there was all this hype around Scream. And then I remember running into this in the store. The same way I ran into Tecmo's Deception. This was a game I just saw in the store, read the back of it, and I'm like, oh, must have to own it. And I still have my original copy as well, but I don't know what happened to the actual original cover. Like I don't have the cover. I just have the disc. But I remember, and I lost my sequel, Clock Tower 2. I have no idea where it went. It disappeared on me, and
That's
I
the
had,
expensive one.
yeah, I know, and that's the one that I have missing.
Yeah.
So I would have to put a pretty penny out to get a copy of that. But I remember getting Clock Tower 1 and putting it in the system and playing it. And I'm like, wow. I literally feel like I'm in the movie Scream. And, just the whole idea of having a slasher style game. I do agree with you. The point and click stuff is slow. It's a mystery, right? You're kind of unsolving a mystery while the horror elements pop up and happen to you. So it is a slow game, but it was so intriguing. It was so interesting. Again, you can get like 10 different endings in it, which just makes you want to go back and play it over and over again. To your point, what did I miss? What decisions do I change to take a different route and get the other endings until you get them all? To this day, I've still never gotten all the endings.
Yeah.
Um, and then the sequel pretty much does the same thing. And the third one that came out, which I remember picking up for PlayStation 2, turned the concept. Well, they took away the whole point and click concept, and it was just a third person adventure where you're running through the game. And I will say, even for that switch, unlike Resident Evil, where I kind of couldn't get on board with what they did, for me, Clock Tower 3, when they did that switch, it actually worked.
Yeah.
So, and I was happy they did do that change. So I liked that a lot. Um, but yeah, just the whole idea of like, this was probably one of the very few games, if not the only game in my recollection, until we got to more recent systems where it really felt like you were in a slasher type film and controlling it.
Yeah, 100%. And what's cool to me too is, you mentioned the element of choice, right? Like in between the scenarios, there's three main scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
In between them, you have a choice to go around town. Like you can go to the newspaper office and talk to Nolan. You can go to the university housing and try to find Helen, whatever. And then eventually you're going to go to a place that's going to trigger the next scenario.
Yep.
Those actions and how you play them, what items you pick up or don't pick up, um, any one of the characters that comes with you to the third scenario, to the castle,
Mm-hmm.
it can be Scissorman. So if you get the absolute worst ending, Edward is Scissorman, the little
Yes.
boy. You can get into a scenario where Inspector Gotts is Scissorman, the policeman.
Yep.
You get into a scenario where Professor Barton is super obsessed with Scissorman and he becomes Scissorman. Um, so that part was definitely cool to me. But the
Yep.
tension, he can appear at any time. So if you're just putzing around, you're like, oh, I'm safe in here. No, you're not.
Yeah.
You're gonna hear that music. Like anytime he gets close, you're gonna get that suspenseful music.
Yep.
Eventually, a door is gonna open. You're like, oh, he's in the room now. I'm gonna hit him with a pot. Um, and it was the first one too, where like there's just wacky hijinks. So like if you're in a room trying to hide from Scissorman, you go into a
Yep.
wardrobe, right? Scissorman comes in, he walks away, you get out of the wardrobe. You can turn around and interact with that wardrobe you just came out of, and Scissorman's in there.
Yep. I remember those moments. I
Remember
remember the
those?
moment like jumping, like coming through windows and stuff.
Yeah.
They definitely did their due diligence in capturing like things that happen in slasher movies that will work in the game. And yeah, and to your point, like everything they did. The other moments I remember in the game the most too are when, and this is an important thing too, as the main characters, it's like you don't have a weapon.
No.
So it's all about either hiding or like finding some type of uh environmental element to help you fight back for a moment just so you can run away. It's never about killing Scissorman. It's just about escaping Scissorman. And I always remember like moments where you would be hiding and then he would find you and kill you.
Yep.
And it was just like I always love those moments where it's like, oh shoot, am I going to get away? And you're actually sitting there feeling that tension build because you don't know if your character is going to escape or not, or going to get found and killed. And just absolutely loved that experience.
Yeah, and it's one of the first titles too. I mentioned the mouse cursor.
Hmm.
If you encounter Scissorman and you escape from him, your
Yeah.
cursor will flash yellow and then eventually flash red. So it's like a stress meter.
Yes.
When you're flashing red and you go to hide from him, you're 100% going to die because he's going to find you and kill you.
Hmm.
So there's that more of an incentive to kind of stay away from him. You have to play the game for X amount of time for that stress meter to go back down.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Just really clever. Like really, really like cleverly done.
yeah, and it's very much like Alien Isolation behind you, where you can't kill Scissorman even if you tried.
Yes.
So in the second scenario, you play as Inspector Gotts. You're interrogating the butler. He actually has a gun, and you can use it on Scissorman once, but it only knocks him down briefly. Uh,
Hmm.
and it allows you to get to the next room, but he's going to come right back after you.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was also another clever way to like kind of get the idea like that a gun won't work
Right.
into the game.
Yep.
So yeah, all in all, like Clock Tower is probably one of my yeah, definitely one of my favorites, if not my favorite horror game from the 90s. You know, that and Resident Evil I kind of go back and forth on. But also I would be remiss to not mention Silent Hill, which is another series that I don't want to admit out loud that I've never played.
Hmm.
But Silent Hill's probably at the top of my list of horror games I've always wanted to play that I have not played.
I picked up the first title about the same time I picked up Resident Evil 2. And to
Hmm.
be fair, I wasn't impressed with it. The atmosphere in it is what you'd expect from a Silent Hill game, but it wasn't until the second one came out where I was like, oh, this is nuts. Like, this is wild.
Yeah,
Um,
that's why they remade the
you
second one and not the first one.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Just crazy atmosphere. You're just unveiling a mystery that turns out you're the bad guy the whole time, right? Just like Tecmo.
Yeah,
Um,
except that time you don't know it. You don't know it until you get, you know, a good
you're
chunk
sort of
in.
in,
Yeah.
yeah, you're kind of in an amnesiac state, right? You're in Silent Hill and you're trying to figure out the mystery, and by the end of it, it all hits you that you did it, and the game is testing to see how guilty you are and judging you.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting. It was such an interesting concept. And again, with the first one, and what was cool about the first one, again, this is for me just watching games and obviously doing research on them because I haven't played it. But just the whole concept of when they were making the game, the the technical limitations they had were severe. So when they were building this whole game out, they were like, "Well, we don't have the capability of showing the whole town, so we're just going to put all of this fog over the town so it'll allow you to still experience the game and it'll give the PlayStation or the Saturn or whatever the opportunity to load as you're moving along." And that setting became so iconic for this series because it gave you that overall sense of like mystery and doom and like just the overall fear of like you don't know what's going to come out of this fog.
Yeah,
And that was just an accident because they did not have the technical capabilities to make the game that they wanted.
yeah, 100%. It just adds to the suspense, right? I mean,
Yeah.
hey, before we move away from Clock Tower,
You want to go
uh,
back to,
no, no, no. Just I want to touch on this. So they advertised the grip controller.
oh,
To,
yeah, I remember the grip controller. Yeah.
yeah, and I actually have one.
Ooh, I'm jealous.
Yeah. One of these days we'll try it together. It's incredibly awful. It's a one-handed D-pad basically
Oh, geez.
that you're
No,
supposed.
thanks.
Yeah. In lieu of actually having a mouse,
I was just gonna say they should have just made a mouse that you could have plugged in.
they made a PS1 mouse.
Yeah, that I was just gonna say PS1 mouse, perfect. The grip, I mean, you might as well just use your controller if it's just the D-pad, you know?
But Clock Tower has got to be the literally the only game to utilize the PS1 mouse. I can't think of anything else
I believe you are correct. Yeah.
that has a cursor on screen that you have to move around.
Yep. I honestly can't think of anything else that did.
Yeah.
So, but the other thing to touch on really quickly with Clock Tower as well is obviously they did a recent remake of it, which I am also itching to start when I have time or when I get through the five other games I'm currently playing simultaneously.
Yeah. I have the remake right here.
There you go.
I bought this one to play. I dumbassedly forgot the deluxe version upstairs, but
That's
essentially
okay.
it's the same thing. They just added a desktop clock for your desk and then like a Dan Barrows stress ball, which is like
Nice.
yeah, the horror blob guy from he's the scissor man
Yes.
basically. But they were nice enough to add a little booklet, which is
Oh,
nice.
very nice.
They've got all the developers in here and stuff.
Cool.
Um,
I think I
I
bought it for PS5.
I have yet to plop this into. It's in my stack. of games that are pending. So
Yeah, and that's definitely one I would love to I would actually love to live stream as well. So that's also like I keep a stack of games where I'm like I want to actually share this with everybody when I play it. And that's one of them that's on the list. So it's like whenever I get done streaming what I'm currently streaming, I should jump over to that one for sure.
yeah,
Um Getting out of the well, I'm trying to think like is there anything else of note in the 90s that really hit you, I want to say, like, or 80s, 90s. I have one on the Dreamcast that I think was in the early 2000s.
yeah. I had mentioned D previously.
Oh, D, which I'm also sitting right there.
Yep. A tough challenge, first person. The movements are clunky. You're timed in the original version.
Yep.
It's just a brutally tough game, but the atmosphere is spot on. You're in a dark mansion. The lighting is dim. You can barely see where you're going. Very gothic. Um, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the early payoff for a lot of these games. Like you said, like Alone in the Dark, D, even Clock Tower eventually goes to a mansion. Resident
Yep.
Evil is a mansion. Like, um, even Tecmo's Deception is a castle. It's like everything is about containing you in these big Gothic structures.
Yep.
Because obviously technical limitations. Because if you're doing an outside world, there's a lot more you have to develop. But also the whole claustrophobic feeling of it all, where it's like you're trapped in this place and you just have to figure out your way through it while all
Yep.
these horrors are coming at you.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I'm looking at my list. I've got some newer ones. Well, newer than the '90s. Let's put it that way. But just so.
Okay. Yeah, because in the 2000s, there was a bit for me, there was a bit of a gap in the 2000s where there wasn't a lot that was jumping out at me horror wise to get. Again, because Resident Evil kind of went in a different direction. I did pick up, like I said, early 2000s, like Clock Tower 3 was one of them. On Dreamcast, I had a game called Ill Bleed, which I absolutely loved. I
Yeah.
still have that game. And again, it's a horror scenario where like each you go to the scary mansion like place and then there are essentially different horror movies that you experience. Like one was like an evil circus with a killer clown at the end. Another one's a creepy mansion with spiders and stuff like that. But each one, it wasn't necessarily about like to get through the mansion. It was all about anticipating where the scares were coming. And your health bar was actually your heartbeat. And if you got scared too many times, you would like literally your heart would explode and you would die. So it was all
Yeah.
about anticipating where those scares were until you got to the end and you had to battle, the boss of each scenario. And I just remember really enjoying how, again, unique a format that was. Later games that came out like Fatal Frame to me kind of took advantage of that too, where it was the camera you were using to try to capture the ghosts or to scare the ghosts away. Um, like those types of things where like I felt like Illbleed really did that well. And then to your point, the game you had mentioned with the flashlight that did the same thing.
Glow in the Dark, New
Yeah,
Nightmare.
yeah, the new night, yeah, Alone in the Dark, New Nightmare, which also did like a similar thing where it wasn't about necessarily fighting back with bullets or weapons, but it was like finding another unique way to carry it. Even like I don't want to mention Luigi's Mansion again because I don't really consider that horror, but the whole idea of like a ghost vacuum,
Yeah.
type of thing. So, but Illbleed did like I just loved that format in Illbleed where it was literally about walking through these levels and trying not to get scared to death,
Yeah.
which was cool.
Yeah, no, Fatal Frame, I was going to touch on that a little bit, but the whole camera obscura thing where you're
Hmm.
flashing these ghosts, you're taking pictures to pacify them long enough to capture them or run away, was a pretty cool mechanic. And on the subject of cool health bars, the game behind you there, Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem.
I was just about to bring that one up too. Yep.
The first time I remember having a sanity meter. So
Yes.
as you inherit a castle, your ancestors dead, you're uncovering what happened with them. Turns out they were into the occult. Shocker. And you're going back into these scenarios. You're being sucked into scenarios that they lived in. So, but as you're going along, you see cosmic horrors, and and the more scary stuff that you see or encounter or witness, your sanity meter just starts to drop off.
Yep.
And by the end of it, if your sanity meter gets too low, the game will just make you hallucinate. So you're hearing disembodied voices, your character's sinking into the floor. It'll give you a fake game over screen, like the game
Oh,
overs.
yes.
It'll roll credits and then you'll snap out of it. Just a pretty cool concept. Early GameCube title.
Yeah, it was definitely a unique concept, and again, something unheard of for Nintendo at the time too, because Nintendo obviously is always known for like those family friendly type of games. So like when a game like this would come out on Nintendo, it was always so surprising. I always think back to the Nintendo 64 when like at the end of its life cycle, it got like Conker's Bad Fur Day, which was a total like 18 plus kind of game. And
Yeah.
then same thing here when you moved over to the GameCube. Resident Evil was also on the GameCube, like you said. I was like, but that was already like an established game. But something like Eternal Darkness, I would have never expected to be on Nintendo and exclusive to Nintendo at that, yeah, as well. Never came out on PlayStation, never came out on Xbox. It was only ever available on the GameCube. And that to me was just, yeah, so surprising. And it honestly, I've yet to play my copy. I've only had my copy for the last like maybe 3 years, like 2 or 3 years. I bought this way down the line because GameCube was one of those consoles that had a short shelf life for me. PlayStation 2 and Xbox was just like tearing it apart at the time.
Yeah,
Um,
and Eternal Darkness did it better too. As far as Lovecraftian horror goes, it's sort of
mhm.
almost like the culmination. Like you started at Alone in the Dark and you've ended with Eternal Darkness. They've tried it since then. Like there's been a legit Call of Cthulhu game. There's been a couple
Yep.
actually. They've rebooted Alone in the Dark, but they've been pretty bad. I think Eternal Darkness is they hit it spot on. And like you
Yeah.
said, for a Nintendo title, it's odd, but it needed to happen. It was a great game.
Yeah. Now, do you think this brings up an interesting question, which I'll throw out now because it just popped in my head? Do you think that back when the consoles were more limited, that the games were more successful because they had to be more creative with how they achieved what their intent was?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely the boundaries were pushed a lot more back then.
Yeah.
And I feel like you had to, if you were a developer and you were trying to get out there, especially if it was your first title
Hmm.
and you were trying to make it or break it, like just what the hell, throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. And you see that up until like the early 2000s. There's still publishers doing it today, but I feel like you saw it a lot more back then.
No, you definitely did. But yeah, it just made me think of that too, because when I think of newer games today, a lot of it is always a lot of what I see in newer games. It's like, oh, it's always like the graphics look so good and you can tell a good story that way. But it, I always get a sense that, and we'll touch on some newer games. I mean, I always get a sense that it's more linear. Whereas the games back then, granted, the stories are linear, but it just felt like there was more depth to them in terms of either the lore or the character development. They just always felt like, I mean, graphics aside, because graphics were very limited then. But just yeah, I was able to connect with it better
Yeah,
than games today. I feel like they lack some of that depth just because it's all about like, oh, we can make this like look super cool and realistic and graphic. Um, but not saying that I fully discredit newer games because might as well jump into some of the newer ones. Like because the one game that I play regularly is Dead by Daylight, which isn't a story-based game. It's a multiplayer game, and it's probably the only multiplayer game I've ever played with a great level of success outside of the Left 4 Dead series that I used to play on Xbox 360,
yeah,
which was more to me more action oriented. Dead by Daylight to me feels more horror based because it's all about fixing a bunch. You have to fix a bunch of generators and open an exit gate and escape before the killer throws you on a hook 3 times. And the coolest thing about that game is they've licensed like almost every major horror movie villain you can think of.
yeah,
That you've got Pinhead in there from Hellraiser, you've got the pig from Saw, you have Michael Myers in there. They really like went above and beyond. That Ghostface from Scream is in it. Like they really reached out to get like every major horror villain. Freddy Krueger is in it. The only one they did not get was Jason Voorhees because at the same time he had his own game. He had his own Friday the 13th game,
Yeah.
which I absolutely loved as well. Again, multiplayer. You got to figure out a way to escape the camp before Jason kills you. Um, Super fun game, was riddled with legal issues because of the rights of the series, and as a result, they weren't able to do what they wanted with that game. But even for what they created, it was so much fun and great to play with friends, which is what I do with Dead by Daylight now.
Yeah, 100%. There was a stretch of time where all those games kind of came out in short order. It was Dead by Daylight, Until Dawn, Days Gone.
Yep.
It's all Days Gone, maybe it's a different category, but
Yeah, it's a little different.
my buddy got me into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game,
Yep, that's another one.
which is a similar concept. Somebody plays Leatherface and everybody else is trying to escape the house or whatever setting you're
Yep.
playing.
Well, in
Um,
that one, it was a little bit different because I think they weren't there three people who were bad guys. Like you could be Leatherface and then other members of the family.
yeah, you can. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was, yeah, cool concept. It's fun to play with other people. It gets you out of if you
Yep.
get bored of playing a survival horror game by yourself in your room, it's a nice palate cleanser. You get online with some other guys
Yep.
and nobody's taking it too seriously, um, but it's got that horror backdrop.
Yeah. Exactly. And then there were other ones that came out too. There was I remember trying Back for Blood, which was another version of Left for Dead, like from the same developers. Didn't catch on as well as Left for Dead did from the late 2000s. And then there was also oh, I had another one Evil Dead. There was an Evil Dead multiplayer game that my friends and I played for a little while too. Killer Clowns from Outer Space came out with a multiplayer game.
Oh yeah.
Again, fun for a minute, but I felt like the issue with all of those games is as much as I loved the licenses they got for them, I think it was the licenses that kind of did them in because they were very limited. In other words, it's like you can only you're only pulling from Killer Clowns, you're only pulling from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so there seemed to be like a limited nature to them. Same thing with Evil Dead. A game like Dead by Daylight was able to pull, again, because they got so many licenses, they're constantly updating the game. Oh, we have new killers in the game. We have new survivors that you can play as and adding all these different things. Friday the 13th, I thought was probably the second most successful of the bunch because they were pulling from, you know, 10 different movies in the franchise. So you were playing as Jason from part one, part two, or part four, or part eight, or, Jason in space from 10, whatever it was. Like you were playing that, and there were different camps that you were on and stuff. So like I felt like there was enough in that franchise to fill out the game. Whereas these other ones I thought were just kind of limited in what they offered.
Let's not forget Jason Goes to Hell.
Jason Goes to Hell. You can't forget Jason Goes to Hell, man. With the whole supernatural Jason that jumps from body to body, and man, I don't know who thought that one up. Give me Freddy versus Jason any day of the week over
Yeah,
Jason
yeah,
Goes to Hell.
yeah, definitely.
The Voorhees knife. I can't forget the Voorhees knife, the magic Voorhees knife. Um, but yeah, for newer ones like multiplayer games are probably more of the newer horror stuff that I play. You had mentioned Until Dawn, which was probably one of the newer games I absolutely loved. The whole concept of, again, this was the game that brought me back to if you played games like Night Trap where it was a movie playing out that you controlled. That is exactly what Until Dawn was. You're basically watching a horror movie and then you make choices. And the choices you make will determine how the story goes. Again, Clock Tower like too. It's like Clock Tower and Night Trap put together where you make decisions and the decisions will determine or cause a butterfly effect throughout the rest of the game and will also determine who's going to survive and who doesn't. So like you had multiple endings for Until Dawn where, you know, maybe only two of the people survived, maybe all, or all of them could survive. None of them could survive depending on what you did in the game. and the choices you made when you were being chased or when you were trying to uncover a part of the mystery. There are so many different options in there that so many different options that would dictate what would happen. And I just had such a great time playing through all of that.
Yeah, for sure. I've only played a little bit of Until Dawn. Just never had a friend. Uh, I never had enough time to play it, and I got onto other things playing with friends. So
Yeah. And that's fine. Like that game is
yeah,
an ultimate like single player experience.
yeah, for sure.
Um, Whereas there was another series that came out also for newer stuff where it was a more where you had the option to do a multiplayer series. It was the Dark Pictures anthology.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if you remember those. They came out with three different games. I only played the first one, which was I played some of the first one, which was Man of Medan.
Yeah,
And again, same thing as Until Dawn, where it's basically a movie unfolding and you're making decisions, but it was a multiplayer game. So you can play it with up to, I want to say up to 3 or 4 friends. And what would happen is you would get to a point in the story where you would break off and you'd each be a different character in the story and you're doing separate things that then will lead you to whatever the next portion is. And whatever you do in those will dictate what happens next.
yeah. I never played. I heard good things about that though.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I played it with a friend of mine for a little bit. We never got all the way through it because we wound up just going back to Dead by Daylight. But I just remember playing through Man of Medan, and I was like, just parts of it, and I'm like, you know what, this is really cool. And again, taking the Until Dawn concept and making it a multiplayer experience. I just thought that was really clever.
That is cool.
Um, yeah, and it's something I need to go back and play. And The Quarry is another game that came out, which was just like Until Dawn, that I need to pick up and play through as well because I really do enjoy the that whole like again, you're basically creating the horror movie by playing through it,
Yeah.
which is really cool.
I don't think we can move on without mentioning Alien Isolation behind you.
Oh, Alien Isolation.
If you want a truly dreadful experience, I mean, it's one of the few Alien titles that are actually playable. But
What, you didn't like Colonial Marines?
no, terrible. I did pick up Dark Descent. I think I mentioned last time,
Yes.
but it's more of a squad-based combat thing. It's got the atmosphere and stuff, but Alien Isolation is a game you play with the lights off and headphones on, and it's just a truly dreadful experience. It's first person.
Yep.
You're not only battling the space station coming decaying out of orbit, but once the alien shows up on the scene, now you're trying to dodge the alien, and just like with Scissor Man, you can't kill the alien.
Yep.
So doesn't matter if you have a pistol or not. Shooting at it means you're dead because it's going to hear you come at you and you're done.
Yep.
So you're hiding in vents, you're hiding in lockers.
It is the ultimate stealth game. It is the ultimate stealth game. I remember when I first started playing it. Again, it's another game I never finished, but I remember when I first started playing it, and I was just like, just the first instinct, like, or the first instant where you see like the alien go by. I just remember like again, like I like my skin was crawling because I was like, holy crap, he's gonna hear me. It's like, what do I do? And
Yeah,
then, making just the tiniest sound, and then you turn around and he's right in your face and you're dead. And then that's it,
you're
it's
dead.
just over. They took basically they just took the original film and they were
Yeah,
like, how do we make this into the ultimate gaming experience? And Isolation, I don't even think I need to say it probably is. It is the best Alien game out there, no question. Like if you have not played Alien Isolation, you're missing out on truly awesome survival horror experience.
agreed. I mean, it's a different experience from the previous titles, like Alien Trilogy, Colonial Marines, those were shooters, right?
Yep,
Basically. This is just like playing, a video game version of Alien. Like you
yep.
said, they nailed the look and the feel. It's lip service to the fans. Slow going at times because sometimes you're just sitting there in a locker with a motion tracker. Like, is it
Don't
gone?
move.
Yeah, for a half an hour, and then
Yep.
um,
That's
even
how
even
that's how it
saving
works.
saving the game, you have to insert a card into the phone to
Yep.
save the game, and it takes 10 or 15 seconds for that thing to even come up and say, "Would you like to save?" And in that time, you can be killed by the
You
alien.
can be killed. Yep.
Um,
There's so much good about that game. There's so much good about that game.
about 60% through the game, they throw you a bone and give you a flamethrower.
Oh,
Uh,
that's nice of them. I never
but
made it that far.
But even then, you've got it. If the alien gets in your face, you can spritz him with the flamethrower, and it goes up into a vent. But it's not. It's coming back.
It's
You
still
know.
going to come back for you. Yeah.
So it's just a temporary reprieve until you can find a place to hide.
Hmm. Yeah. But like, yeah, they really honed in on what made Alien such a great movie and translated it into a game form. Like, there's nothing bad I can say about that game. There really isn't.
And they tied it in well too. I mean, you play as Amanda Ripley. You're Ripley's daughter. You're
Yep.
invested already. You know what's going on. You're looking for your mom. You're like, okay, cool. We're gonna find out what finally happened in Nostromo, and it's a great game.
It's interesting. We can categorize these in so many different ways, and we can talk about these things forever. But I think we've run through a pretty good list of games.
It's a huge gamut.
It is a huge gamut, and there are different formats to them. But overall, like, I mean, the horror genre is there's a plethora of games you can play. Not only things that have come out before, but things coming out soon. Like some of the other news that came out recently. Oh, I forgot to mention, like, I think it was last year, they came out with like a 16-bit Halloween game and Evil Dead game that you can buy as a two-pack, which I did buy. And it's just great. It's like they figured out kind of a unique way to create a Halloween game with Michael Myers. You're playing as Michael Myers and you're kind of running through the scenarios in the movies. Um, but coming soon type of games, they've announced some more licensed stuff. Like, there is a Halloween game coming out where it's coming out September 8th, 2026, where you're actually Michael Myers going through Haddonfield, stalking and murdering people. And again, it's a multiplayer game. One person controls Michael, and then you have four people as like people, the townspeople or people in Haddonfield. And then there are a bunch of NPCs in the game too. Um, there is a Hellraiser game coming out, Hellraiser Revival, which is going to be it's a first-person action horror survival game. So where you get the puzzle box and you have to survive when you make your bargain with Pinhead. And then on the end of all of this, the Friday the 13th, the guys Gunn and Ilphonic, who created the original Friday the 13th game that went away because of licensing issues, because of the whole legal issues with the rights to the actual franchise, they are now swinging back around. There's going to be a new Friday the 13th game coming out, and it might be next year that we're getting it now that all the legal issues are over. So that's also awesome news as well. And those are just licensed ones. I'm sure there are going to be some original horror games coming out. There always are. And I'm just curious. I'm always curious to see what's next.
Yeah, 100%, man. There's always new and exciting stuff coming out. We're
Yeah.
really starting to, we're pushing the boundaries with hardware and a lot of indie titles coming out too.
Oh, a ton.
There's just so many games out there.
Yep. So, in closing, any other final words you want to say in terms of horror games, or do you think we scared up enough for
I
this
think
episode?
I'm sure we could keep going, but
We
in the
can.
interest of time, um, but I think we should mention the scariest game of all, which is Mario Tennis for the Virtual Boy.
Mario.
Um,
Well, I
really,
think every Virtual Boy game you can
any,
consider the scariest.
I was gonna say any title, just pick one.
Any title. I mean, yeah, oof. Don't get me started on that. I just did an entire episode on it. That was enough for me.
That
But for everybody,
your eyes will bleed, your ears will bleed.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly. I have no ears, but they will bleed. But for those of you out there who love horror gaming, would love to hear from you. Sound off on any of our social media channels. Tell us which horror games that you absolutely love, either from the past or present. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. And you guys can find us on Facebook.com/Retro Gamers Podcast, on Instagram and Blue Sky at Retro Gamers Podcast. You can check us out on Spotify and YouTube as well at Retro Gamers Podcast. Just remember to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Would love to talk to you. You can email us at email@theretrogamers.com. John, where can they find you?
you can shoot me an email at crerecycling@gmail.com or hit up the website. sorry, yeah, gmail.com, or go to crerecycling.com if you want to see what we do or what kind of things we're up to. Um, I don't really do social media a whole lot. We do have a Facebook page, but I don't really mess with it.
All
Uh,
right. Well,
that's
that's
kind of
enough. They
what
can
we
they
do.
can track you down on email. That's perfectly fine. And for all of you out there, I hope you guys have a very happy, very spooky Halloween. And outside of that, we will catch you next time on the Retro Gamers Podcast.